What's up guys, over here today bringing you Let's Talk F1 2015, and today we'll be analysing the new RB11 that was debuted at Jerez. And it is a very interesting car, as you can see, with a very different livery to what Red Bull are used to running. They're running a Dazzle camouflage camo to try and conceal some of the shapes and kind of curvature of the car, to try and maybe conceal what they've come up with. And we're going to try and analyse it and see what's what, really. So we start off at the front, and obviously Red Bull now have got a bit of a different nose compared to last year's car because of the new regulations, and they've gone for a little thumb nose like Williams. Only two teams have run that thumb nose, which are Williams and Red Bull, so very surprising to see. And as you can see, the front wing is highlighted in red, drawn around best I can all the little parts, because the Dazzle cam actually does, to be fair to Red Bull, the Dazzle cam does sort of work. You aren't able to see exactly every single line in there if you just look at it without kind of really picking out the line. So there, the front wing is in red, and it is pretty much the same wing as Red Bull ran at the end of the last season. No changes there, and why would they? It's been a really great front wing for, you know, the last 2-3 years for Red Bull. They've been working on it, evolving this same front wing, and they've got it to this really complex stage. And this and the Mercedes front wing really doesn't need to change throughout, you know, from season to season. Obviously they'll tweak it a little bit, and for circuit to circuit they may take some cascades off at the front to make it a bit lower drag, etc, but it's pretty much the same standard Red Bull wing that we come to see, and the same one that Mclaren have sort of emulated with Peter going over there. But yeah, the nose is quite interesting actually. You know, it looks just like a little stub when you first look at it, but if you look at it closer from a side angle, you'll actually see that there's a bit more to it, and it actually swoops down and curves underneath the whole section of the front wing, and this is very important indeed. The fact the nose has a really nice smooth curvature going underneath the actual pylons of the front wing and then comes upwards, it seems, from the shape of it, is really important, because if any air goes and hits the nose, hits beside the nose and underneath the nose, as I mentioned in my McLaren video and other videos before, the air is moving so fast it's like a liquid, and it will follow the curvature of the nose, and this means that the nose is shaped in a way where the air can get chucked up towards the winglets and the pylons underneath the car, and those in turn are very important for channeling air to the rear of the car, to the side pods. You know, a lot of the aerodynamics and downforce created of these cars is all made really underneath the car, when it's all being channeled by these winglets underneath the car towards the rear of the car, to the rear end, to the side pods, to the barge boards, and it all starts with the front end, obviously with the front wing, and also this nose, which is a really nice curved shape. Probably not, you know, the best looking nose ever, but, you know, it works for them, and, you know, compared to a lot of the other cars, you know, it's pretty much a similar sort of thing, similar to Williams, and really, to be honest, after a while, you're going to forget about how the nose looks, to be honest. So now we move on to the next section of analysis, which is going to be the new Red Bull S-Duct, which they've got on this car, and they've been running the S-Duct for the last 2 years, 2013 and 14, and if you're not too sure what the S-Duct means, essentially, it's basically a way of getting air from the front end of the car when the nose is around where the nose is, basically underneath the nose, where the nose tip is, for getting that air channeled all the way up to the top of the chassis via a duct inside the nose cone. And it's a very clever system, first debuted by the Sauber no less in 2012, and then Red Bull adopted it. I believe Ferrari also had dabbled a bit of it in 2013. I'm not too sure if they still run it. I don't think so, from what I can see. But in 2013, they trialled it a little bit, because you could see pictures of little slot gaps underneath the Ferrari wing. And you can see the same thing this year with Red Bull. This time, cleverly, because it's on the sides of the car this time. It's not on the underneath, because the new regulations actually don't allow you to have any holes in the nose tip or underneath the actual nose section. So Red Bull have had to put it on the sides this time, and we're just going to pick out for you right now. There it is in yellow, and you can see in red is where the exit of the S comes in. Now, so essentially the air from that side, and there'll be another one on the right hand side that you can't see in this shot of angle, basically air coming through there will be channeled up to the red part of the car, and that's basically a little duct exit that kind of nicely just attaches itself to the top of the chassis. So air goes through, and it's going to be shaped like an S. That's why it's called an S duct. Maybe this year with Red Bull having the slots on the sides, it may be a bit of a kind of like a tooth almost, maybe kind of two channels coming together together. I don't think they'll have a whole duct going across the nose, maybe with two separate ones, but it will certainly conjoin together and exit through nicely on top of the chassis and get that air on the top. Now, you may be wondering how and why that is important. So first of all, we'll go through the different iterations. So this is the 2013 version of the Red Bull S duct. So here we've got the actual duct itself, as you can see, shaped like an S, well, from here to backward S, and you've got the top half, that's where the chassis, the highest point of the chassis is, and underneath you've got that little flat bit, and that is where the underneath of the car would be. So we're going to draw the rest of the car in red. So this is just a rough little sketch of the 2013 car with the stepped nose that you can see, and this is what Red Bull ran eventually. You know, the S duct was sort of attached to the nose cone, and it was housed inside of the nose cone, and the duct to go in was underneath the nose cone, open to the air, and then it went on top of the chassis. And for 2014, obviously, we saw the nose of the Red Bull like a keel, and that keel had a little slot inside, and that allowed air to go through. Red Bull also had a little duct underneath the nose, so any air that went on the left and the right of the nose underneath the car would also get sucked in. But also, a lot of it was done by the keel little nose tip on 2014, and then it came out the top. It was a bit more subtle in 2014, I feel, in terms of the way it was shaped into the nose cone. It was definitely a kind of nicer solution, I think. And yeah, so that was what happened with 2013 and 2014. And so now for 2015, Red Bull have done the same again, except they put it on the sides, because obviously the new rules are actually banning this sort of thing of having little inlets underneath the nose cone and on the nose tip. So Red Bull have ingeniously had a little solution there on the sides, very nicely packaged, and it was actually quite hard to spot, really. And I say, obviously, lots of analysts have picked it out, and that helped quite a lot. So basically, why do they do this? Essentially, you might be wondering, why do they need air on top of the chassis? So you have a whole lot of air coming at the front wing and the nose tip, and that's all well and good, and it hits the front wing, and it will spew off, you know, through, you know, will go around the tyre, it will go into the barge boards, it will go into the cooling, the side pods, and that's all well and good. But then you have this section of air which is hitting the nose, which is hitting the big chunk of chassis that's swooping down, and that can create a bit of turbulent air and cause air streams to break apart, because air flows in a nice stream and it generally follows a nice path, but sometimes it gets broken up, and what you need is a really nice smooth air flow to keep this flow up together. So essentially the S duct allows air underneath the nose, at the nose tip, to come up to the chassis, and as it flows over the top of the chassis, it creates a nice smooth airstream, kind of brings all these separated air bits together and creates a nice smooth flow on the top of the car, and goes to the rest of the car, filters back over the side pods, obviously, and then through. Also, some of it might go into the inlet for the engine and cooling. So that's essentially why they need the S duct. And you know, they've been running for 2-3 years. It's not been a new technology, but it's just a really nice new way of packaging it on the new Red Bull. So we now move on to the rear of the car, to the side pod specifically. So you can see here that we've got a really nice Coke bottle shape going on with the Red Bull. Obviously, Red Bull, the masters of this sort of Coke bottle shape, and Newey really good at making really tight packaging cars. Obviously, last year they were a bit compromised because their Renault engine was overheating, and they actually had to have a few slot gaps in the engine cover, and they couldn't have it as tight as possible because of the Renault cooling. And we've actually seen this year that Red Bull have said that they've worked a lot with Renault, and they've actually changed the whole layout of how the cooling is put in the engine cover and bay, and how it's kind of worked through. So they've been able to get a much tighter side pod. As you can see, even undercuts itself on the top towards where the driver's head is, in line with it. You can see I've pointed to it, a little undercut. So the bottom of the side pod kind of curves right in and cuts away at the top side pod, and that's where the air from the barge board will come through. It will come through there, it will come down past underneath the Infinity logo, and will flow through to the rear of the car. Really good stuff. You can also see I've pointed out there, just by the driver's hands, where the Infinity logo is near his hands, there's also a little vein there. That's nothing new, that's been on the car, but I just thought it was nice to pick out. It's something that Red Bull have only done, where they've had these little winglets that have actually been seen to flex a little bit. So they, you know, they're really pushing the boundary on legality there, but it does a little flex there, and that just basically is a vortex generator that allows air to really come through on the top of the side pod surface. And then we've got a few little, you can just about see, I've pointed out in red as well, on the floor of the car, just where the rear tire is. You've got a few little wings, little holes, allow the air to go through into this vacuum kind of section between the rear wing plate and the rear tyre. That little section there, where I mentioned in my Ferrari video, they have winglets there on the brake duct. If you can get a nice stream of air there, cause a vacuum, that really sucks in air for the diffuser, because it creates a kind of vacuum effect where there's a really good amount of air just being sucked into the diffuser area. And then finally on the rear wing end plate, you've got some two kind of strut lines on the bottom. That's nothing new. That's sort of what every sort of team, the top teams have been running. Ferrari, you've seen it on them. McLaren run about 5 different little slots. Mercedes, I believe, also run 2 different slots. And then they've got a nice slot at the front, just where the total T is down the side. And then they've got the usual little slot gaps on the top that you can't really see with the livery. So I've had to kind of draw them out just so you could see them. But yeah, so that's why also why they might be doing the livery. You know, I never know. There might be some sort of winglet or slot that I've missed because of the camo, and that's why they've run the camo, really, if you're wondering about that. And so finally going on to the last bit of analysis of the Red Bull, because essentially everything else about this car is actually the same, which I'll get onto at the very end. But this last bit of analysis is going to be about the blown wheel that Red Bull are running at the moment. Ferrari run this, McLaren have run it, I think they still are running it, and certainly I think maybe Mercedes have doubled with it in the past. And actually Red Bull got caught out once in 2012, I believe, in Canada, where they were asked to remove this kind of section because FIA thought it was a bit too much. But, you know, you push the boundaries as much as you can. So Red Bull have got this new sort of brake duct, which is new, I think, compared to last year's, and essentially it's a bit bigger than it's needed, and basically half of that brake duct won't even channel towards the brakes. Half of that brake duct, the channel of air will go straight through the wheel into the wheel nut. It won't even hit the brakes, it will just go straight to the wheel nut, and the air will pass out of the wheel nut. It will just kind of come out of that circular hole you can see in the wheel and just come through. Now usually, obviously, they usually close it up so the wheel gun can go in, but you are able to open it up and allow air through, and the wheel gun will still fit fine in the pit stops. But basically the air will come through. And why is that? So basically what they want to do is they want to get the air coming out the wheel nut and kind of going backwards on the car and coming through towards the side pod. And that's because, you know, when you have that front tire going through the air, it creates a lot of turbulent air. There's a lot of air just kind of bouncing off the front, bouncing off the rear. As it rotates, the air just gets chucked around everywhere. Not very good for what the aero guys want. So essentially they're trying to do is they're trying to create like a wall of air and try and smooth out airflow around, in a general sense, around to the side pod from the tire. So that's exactly what they're trying to do with the blow wheel nut. It's something Ferrari have done for the last year or so. McLaren have tried it. Red Bull have been also running it for the past 2-3 years as well, but it's just something to pick out because I believe in 2014. I don't think it wasn't hugely highlighted by analysts, so I don't think they maybe ran it for that long, or maybe they didn't run it. I'm not too sure. You don't quote me on that, obviously. I'm not a complete expert. This is just going off my own research and my own interest. But yeah, that's the last final interesting thing about the Red Bull analysis. And so generally a very nice car. I mean, obviously the livery looks amazing. Tell me what you guys think. I really like it. It's a really nice livery, and it works very well in terms of what they're thinking of. You know, trying to confuse your eyes. That's what the dazzle camouflage is for. It was first constructed for World War I ships to try and stop you know, enemies kind of seeing the speed and kind of where they were in the ocean of ships, and now they've started using it on F1 cars. They've used it before in you know, world endurance cars. Other cars they've used the dazzle camo before in testing to try and divert eyes away from aero development. So Red Bull going that path as well. So yeah, that's been the Red Bull car. Those are the different things. A lot of the rest of the car looks from the outside very, very similar to the RB10, and it is. The Red Bull team have said it is very similar in areas around the car, but that's only on the skin. They've said that a lot of stuff has been done underneath this skin to make it a lot better than the RB10. So I'm assuming that will mean the cooling of the engine, the packaging of the engine work, and generally just that whole area which Red Bull are really lacking. Apparently they've worked very hard with Renault on that. So they've said a lot of the improvements you'll see that are underneath the skin. You won't actually be able to see it physically on top. So yeah, that has been the RB11 analysis. Quite a long video. I think probably one of the longest videos I've done for the analysis video. But the Red Bull is such an interesting car. I love analysing it. It's just they come up with so many different ideas and so many different things on the car every year. Really great to analyse. So yeah, if you guys did enjoy that video, then go give it a like. Comment below what you thought. Subscribe on you for weekly F1 content just like this, and also gaming stuff if you're interested in that stuff. But yeah, I've been aarava. Hope you enjoy the rest of the day, and I'll see you guys next time.